again. And it's good to have you with us out on the video network. And we're doing the Song of Songs, or the Song of Solomon, as it appears in the Bible. And we'll look at some very mystical things, spiritual things, symbolism, which the whole Song of Solomon actually is, deep symbolism and mysticism. So have one of those little Bibles, which you do. Turn it on to page 575 and look at the Song of Songs, chapter 4 and verse 8. Here's something very interesting. Come with me from Lebanon, my spouse. Okay. In this particular instance, you have that which is, or we refer to as God speaking to your spirit. It's the masculine speaking to the feminine. And the word Lebanon is not there for no reason. Okay. The word Lebanon means white. White. And it goes in with the old thing of, Jesus is going to return on a white horse. Basically, for those of you who are into meditation, it's speaking of that point in meditation when you're pure, when the mind is pure, when you're separated from all the thoughts of the mind. So it says, come with me from Lebanon. So in other words, the bridegroom who is speaking to the spouse will not be able to take you until you reach that point of white, reach that point of Lebanon, reach that point where virgin consciousness, if you will. It's a union between the bridegroom and Christ. It's a union between the bridegroom and us, Uranus and Gaia. It's mind and spirit. Now look what it says in verse 8. Come with me from Lebanon, my spouse, with me from Lebanon. Look from the top of Amana. Okay? Look from the top of Amana. The word Amana means perennial. It's always there. Okay. So we have two words that are interesting. First of all, the word white, which is purity of consciousness. The word perennial, which is that it is like a rock. It is solid. It is that which is always there. And the third word, which is from the top of Shinar, or Shemer, S-H-E-N-I-R. Shinar means stone. And there you have a reference to the pineal stone, the pineal gland of the brain, which is called the pineal stone. And then it says Hermon. The word Hermon means peak. All right, peak. So then we have basically a description of consciousness. That which is the eternal bliss of divine nothingness, if you would, the higher realms of consciousness, the location of the pineal stone, that which is the highest point, that which is the mountain experience in your life. And that's where the bridegroom comes for the spouse. That's where the Christ... See, the point basically being this, all right? You can try to do everything. You can study. You can go to different groups, and all of that's going to eventually be meaningless because all you have to do is be willing to retreat within yourself and wait. That's... If we could create this, then it wouldn't be worth doing. If, on the other hand, this is created by a power that dwells within you, which is above and beyond the humankind, then by all means it's extremely well worth doing. Okay? The consummation that takes place in the upper realms is always described biblically as the consummation of the mountain. That's why Jesus feeds the disciples in the large upper room. We're talking about your higher mind. We're talking about something that's describing your inner experience. The large upper room is the mountain. Go with me, if you would, to page 467, and I'll show you what's the admonition as far as the Bible telling you about experiencing meditation. Okay, and see what it says. It's in page 467, and it's Psalm chapter 11. Okay? Psalm chapter 11. And look at verse 1. In the Lord put my trust. How do you say to my soul, flee as a bird to your mountain? That's all you have to do. Flee as a bird to your mountain. There is nothing more complicated. We were talking before. The born-again mainline Christianity has made, quote-unquote, salvation so complicated. So many rituals, so many things that you're supposed to have to do. And in the New Age, it's even more complicated. You don't know whether you got to carry a special kind of stone, or you got to have a special kind of smoke, or you got to have something to play a special kind of music, whether the music should be slow or fast, whether you should open your eyes or close your eyes, whether you should say this mantra or that mantra. It's bizarre. All that is necessary is to flee as a bird to your mountain, to raise yourself into that higher realm of consciousness, and the rest happens from what you call God. I don't want anything to do with meditation. I don't want anything to do with mantras. I want nothing to do with any of it if it depends on my effort or something that I'm going to cook up, because it's going to get screwed up. But the point and the reason that we go into this place is we are seeking the consciousness and the mind of God. If you have an experience, in other words, if you meditate and you begin to levitate, say you float around the room, or you're surrounded with all kinds of lights or whatever, what good is it doing for anybody? But you've had an orgasmic experience of some kind, but what good does it do? What good does it do for starving children? What good does it do for the brutalized earth? What good does it do for the people that are in constant struggle and fighting with one another? Watching television tonight, I saw the children of Mogadishu and Somalia starving to death, nothing but skin and bone, and the next thing you're seeing guys with guns running down the street blasting everybody in sight. So there's an insanity that runs rampant, and we're trying to correct it by finding out how to meditate or finding out how to do all of these different things. And it'll never come that way, because the admonition is laid down to you. Flee as a bird to your mountain. That's all that's required. Okay? So what happens here is that the bridegroom, which is the divine mind, intercourses with the bride, which is the spirit. The bridegroom is the divine mind, and the bride is the spirit. You must have the aspect of God which is both masculine and feminine, or it won't work. Okay? Now look what it says. Flee, in verse 4, chapter 4, verse 8, from the lion's dens. Lions in upper realms symbolize spiritual manifestations and strength and courage, but in the lower realm they symbolize those thoughts which will eat you up, devour you, drive you crazy. And that's another thing. It doesn't make any difference how many lectures you go to. It doesn't make any difference how many courses you take. It doesn't make any difference how many techniques you adapt. Your mind is still going to drive you nuts, because your mind is going to tell you, you got to go on, you got to do this, you got to do that, you got to do the other thing. You're not where you should be. I was reading a guru once, and he said, it's like a rose trying to become a rose. It doesn't know that it already is. And there's no need for all of this. To recognize who you really are and what you really are, and that within you is this bridegroom-bride manifestation that will come to be. So let me read you something out of Buddha. It's called Buddha Karita. It says, I, Buddha, am born from supreme knowledge for the welfare of the world. Thus, this is my last birth. Thus did he of lion gait, gazing at the four corners, utter a voice full of favorable meaning. So we have Jesus as the Lion of Judah, Buddha described as he of lion gait, and the lion represents either on the higher realms of consciousness that which is the saving power of quote-unquote God, or in the lower realm that which is the thing that will devour you. There's another interesting one. Look at verse 8, chapter 4, from the mountains of the leopards. Do you see that? Do you know what a leopard is in mysticism? Confusion. A leopard means confusion because the spots symbolize human error. The purity of the color is compounded by the spots which symbolize human error. See? That's mixed with the truth. It's the lower mind. It's the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. It's the duality. It's the mountain of the leopard. Come away from the mountain of the leopard. That's all you've got to do. Put down all of your reading. Put down all of your analyzing. Put down all of your studying. Put all of this stuff down and be willing to trust that which is within you and go to the mountain. And come out from all of this stuff is what this book is telling you to do. So the marriage of the spirit and the mind in the higher realms of consciousness gives us courage and the power to overcome and a higher understanding to separate ourselves from the confusion, that which is represented by the leopard. Hey, the leopard represents confusion in mysticism. A bull represents conversation in American conversation. You say, oh, let's go shoot the bull. That means you're talking about having a conversation. Well, the leopard means confusion because of the spots. Now let's go to 4:9, okay? Back in the Song of Songs 4:9. Now this is interesting. Watch this very carefully. You have ravished my heart, my sister, my spouse. That's why we titled the name of this tape, I Married My Sister. Very interesting. Now here's where you go. What we're going to have to do, if you want to really understand something and you want to see something that I think you've probably never seen before, and it is very interesting, come with me, okay? You cannot go beyond this scripture without looking at the Greek legend of the birth of Zeus. All right? And that's where my sister, my spouse, comes from. Now, let me set the stage for you. Uranus, which is the planet moving into position in the Aquarian age to rule the universe, was at one time married to Gaia. Okay? Gaia is the Earth. So Uranus married Gaia. There's the male principle, there's the female principle. Well, they were married and they had a bunch of children, and one of the children was named Kronos, but is known better to you as Saturn. If you look in a Christian Bible, you know it by the name of Satan, but it's the same thing. Now, Kronos, Saturn, comes along, takes his sickle. You ever see Father Time with the sickle, with the New Year's thing? Saturn or Kronos takes his sickle and castrates Uranus. And what happened, and what the symbolism of that is that Uranus' seed can no longer enter Gaia. That which is the Spirit of God can no longer enter into the earth because Saturn or Satan has castrated Uranus. Now what happens then? Kronos or Saturn, okay, gives birth in a relationship, with Uranus, and they have children. He creates children, and one of the children is called Rhaia, R-H-E-I-A. Okay, Rhaia is one of the children. Rhaia was born, as was Kronos, from the relationship between Uranus and Gaia. Rhaia is Kronos' sister, which is obvious because Kronos is a son of Uranus and Gaia, and this is his sister Rhaia. Now, the plot thickens. Rhaia is also the spouse of Kronos, the spouse of Saturn, and they have children. They have intercourse, and they have children. One of the children's name was Hestia. Another is named Demeter. And they had one that was named Hera of the Golden Sandals, and another very famous child that I'm sure all of you will know as soon as I put his name. He was in charge of the underworld, and his name was Hades. That's where it came from. Okay. He was in charge of the underworld without a heart of pity. And, of course, through this union, they also were getting ready to give birth to Zeus, which is the supreme god. Now, this is where it comes from. Do you remember, you'd remember, but King Herod in the biblical story of Christmas went and slaughtered all the children 2 years and younger because he heard that this child, Jesus, or the king, was about to try to overthrow his kingdom, and so he had to kill all the children 2 years and younger. In the story of Hari Krishna, King Kansa killed all the children 2 years and younger because he heard that Hari Krishna was going to overthrow his kingdom. In this particular story, every child that was born to Rhea and Kronos swallowed them. Ate them all. Ate them all. And it's basically the foundation of the same story that we accept as the Christmas story, or that was the Hare Krishna story, and that is the fear of the lower mind that is going to be overwhelmed by the child who is going to be born. In this particular instance, the child is Zeus. So as each of the children were swallowed, it was time for Rhaia to give birth to Zeus. So she didn't know what to do. So she went to Uranus and Gaia and sat and had a conversation. What do I do? See? And what they did, it's once again part of the same story of like we had in the Jesus story. They sent Rhaia away into the countryside. You remember when Joseph and Mary had to take the child, Jesus, and flee into Egypt? Well, in the Hare Krishna story, Sibhavida and Devaki had to take the child and flee across the ice fields. And in this particular case, Rhaia has to take her child and flee because the wicked Kronos or Saturn is going to eat the child and is going to kill the child. See? So what happens was Zeus was taken by Gaia, and Gaia swallowed Zeus into the bosom of the earth to hide. So he was actually born out of the earth. In the same way that Jesus was born in the cave and Krishna was born in a cave, Zeus was born out of the bowels of the earth, out of a cave. Now, what were they going to do with Kronos, with Saturn? He knew that there was a child born, so they took a stone and they wrapped this stone in swaddling clothes. And guess what? He ate it. He swallowed the stone. And he was sure. But then he found out that Zeus was alive. And Zeus began to grow up and have power, and that made Kronos, Saturn, very sick, so he started throwing up all the kids. He was throwing up all over the place. And all the kids were coming out, you see. But what is it? Wait a minute now. Watch what this says. The stone that was fed to the lower mind, Kronos and Saturn, caused Kronos, Saturn, to throw up all of the others and set all of the captives free. Do you see? All of that which had been taken captive by the lower mind was expelled into freedom because of the stone. All right? The stone was planted first as a wonder to mortal men. It is the stone, it says in the Bible, the stone that the builders rejected has turned out to be the capstone. I was showing the folks this morning that when it says the stone which the builders rejected is the cornerstone or the capstone of the building, if you have a $1 bill, you'll see that figure on the back of a $1 bill. You'll see the pyramid, and at the top you'll see the single eye, which represents the pineal gland or the pineal stone. So that's where that came from, okay? But what happened was all of this ended in the glory of Zeus becoming, the eternal God. And people worshiped Zeus as God. And of course, I'll tell you, if you look in Greek, there's not a whole lot of difference between the name Zeus and in Jesus' name in Greek is Isis. Okay. But anyhow, the relationship that spawned this birth was between the sister and the brother, who were also husband and wife, bridegroom and bride. Okay, and it was the same with Kansa and Devaki of the Hare Krishna, and it's the same with Mary and God. Mary is sister and spouse. Sister and spouse. Mary is not only the bridegroom, a bride of God, she's also the mother. And all of this had its beginnings way back into the mythology of the universe with Zeus and so forth and so on. And that's where the sister-spouse type of origin came from. And it's very, very important for you to understand that, because inside of you is your sister, which is your spirit. And inside of you is the groom, which is your mind, the divine mind. And so you have the sister and you have the spouse within you. You have the bridegroom and you have the bride. And it all has its origin from this most ancient time that goes back into the infinity of ages. Now look at, let's go back to the Song of Songs, chapter 4, verse 9. It says, you have ravished my heart. Look what it says. You have ravished my heart, my sister, my spouse. In other words, you fill my heart with joy. See, that's what you've got to understand. Instead of looking for some teacher, look for your sister. Look for your spouse. Look for that which is within you and trust it. You know, the worst thing that hinders people, whether it be in the New Age, whether it be in contemporary religion, the worst thing that hinders people is their attempt to intellectualize all this, to somehow figure it all out. How am I supposed to do this? Instead of just trusting this universe and allowing yourself to be catapulted into the nothingness in which you would grow into this new divine mind. The easiest thing in the world to do, we make complicated. And look what it says here. You have ravished my heart, my sister, my spouse. You have ravished my heart. Watch this next one. Look at it. With what? One of your eyes. There's the key. You have ravished my heart with one of your eyes. Now, keeping your finger right there and looking at that. See, don't look at it as something that's said 6,000 years ago. Look at it as something that's being said to you. And then say, what the heck else do you have to know? What else do you have to learn? Because here's the admonition. You have ravished my heart with one of your eyes. Now go over to page 781 and look at look at Matthew. Matthew chapter 6. Matthew chapter 6. And what does Jesus say? Look at verse 22 of Matthew chapter 6, page 781. And Jesus Christ says, the light of the body is the eye. If therefore thy eye be single, thy whole body shall be full of light. If your eye be single, your whole body. That's what, I mean, you know, you'll never find me a teacher. You'll never find an instructor. You'll never find a minister. You'll never find anybody on the face of this earth who can give you more authority than what you just read. If you practice the single eye, your body will fill with light. In a contemporary way, the single eye is known as the pineal gland or the pineal gland of the brain. And the pineal or pineal gland of the brain secretes a hormone called melatonin, which is a skin lightener. So Jesus Christ could have said years and years ago, if you practice the single eye, your body will fill with melatonin. Okay. So here then, we see in the Song of Songs, it says, you have ravished my heart with one of your eyes. Look at page 477. Go to Psalm chapter 32, and let me show you something. Because all I'm trying to say to you is no matter where you study, no matter what information you get, and I mean, it's all right to you know what's one of the problems? I studied in an early time in the books and some of the works of Joel Goldsmith, studied them and but you know what the problem is? Many of us make gods out of teachers. We hang on to these people. This person knows how to do this, and this person, and you've got to break that. And you've got to run away from that, see? And you've got to understand that you just received the teaching that works. And it doesn't come from me. It comes from eternity. And it's telling you what is required to fulfill. See? Look what it says in Psalm chapter 32, all right? And verse 8. I will instruct you and teach you in the way which you shall go. I will guide you with mine eye. All right? There used to be one of the works that they would put an initiate through in Egypt was they put this guy in a cave, and he'd go through. It was like a maze. It was like a Disneyland thing. You're all through these conquers all of these various torments in order to battle your way. It's like, you know, the Raiders of the Lost Ark. Until finally you could battle your way to this secret thing when all that was hanging down in the center of this cavern was this tremendous eye. And the guy would go on the street, have to fight dragons and all of this stuff. And all it was a symbol of overcoming your own mind and your own desires and your own thoughts and your own fears and entering in and finding that the bliss of eternity is summed up in the single eye, which is the pineal gland of the brain, which is located in the center of the brain, and actually is stimulated by the action of this kundalini. When I tell people that sometimes, especially in the Christian circles, they look at you like you're a screwball. You can walk to the back of this building, you can open a book there, and you can see an article from the New York Times, which says that the pineal gland of the brain is stimulated by an activity that goes through the nerve centers of the spine and impacts and opens up the right hemisphere of the brain. I mean, science knows it now, you see. And that's all that you have to do. And the energy will come. But when sometimes I heard you talking, Rose was talking a little while ago about something like some of the New Age magazine. They sell these special goggles, you know, or special earphones you put on and, you know, light your head up and all of this stuff. And Jesus remarks about that kind of stuff. It's nothing new, whether it be drugs or whatever it is. Jesus says people try to take heaven by force. You can't. You can't. All you have to do and all that you have to be willing to do is to accomplish nothing. Just give yourself. And allow yourself to become one with that universe within you, okay? Now look what it says in verse 9 again, Song of Songs. You have ravished my heart, my sister, my spouse. You have ravished my heart with one of your eyes, with one chain of your neck. Okay, when you get to this, to the word neck, and it becomes pretty easy, but let me draw a picture if I can. All right. The neck is the bridge between the physical and the mental. And the neck was always revered in all of the aspects of Bible. You'll find people falling on another person's neck and kissing their neck. Of course, they do that now, but not for the particular same reasons that they did it then. This was to say a crossing has been made. You have risen from the lower realms of the physical or the flesh up into the higher realms of consciousness. Right? And so then it says, with one chain of your neck. And the chain about a neck is a decoration of gold. In other words, it says that the movement of God is stimulated through the neck as the kundalini rises up the spine of the seven chakras, through the neck and impacting the pineal gland of the brain. There's a story in the ancient writings of Babylon. It says, the lady of the gods drew nigh and lifted up the great jewels that had been made according to her wish and said, what gods are there? By the jewels which are about my neck I will not forget. And what's saying is that each jewel and each stone and each colored stone has a mystical meaning and a symbolism to the ancient people. And in the Bible, it's the same. So my sister spirit, which becomes the virgin spouse of Christ within, giving birth brings joy through the single eye and the pathway which leads from the lower flesh to the higher mind. You know, you could, you know the thing which is interesting. This to me is the most interesting thing at all. And that is that Jesus Christ says that the only way you're going to find this kingdom within you is if you come as a child. A child who can't read. A child who is just willing to obey what he hears and sit and wait. It's the only way. It won't work any other way. Come as a child. To enter within yourself just as a child, not knowing where you're going. I mean, you're talking about being consumed by the universe. You're talking about being consumed by something so beautiful and so magnificent, the world has never even experienced or expected such a thing. Instead, we've seen all of the violence and all the horror and all of the hate and all of the yelling and all the bombs that have dropped over the last 2,000 years. And here's an opportunity for you. But we're so mired, we get so mired down in all these doggone things that we got to do in order to accomplish. What are you trying to accomplish? And you know what everybody's trying to do? Everybody's trying, in the same in the New Ages and the old, they're trying to have an experience. And when you have an experience, you're as far away from God as you'll ever get. It's not your job to have an experience. You don't need to have an experience. Your job is to sacrifice yourself. Crucify yourself spiritually so that the only experience that exists is you are no more. You become nothingness, and your mind starts to change. Your feelings start to change, and you say to yourself, as Paul says, it is no longer I who live, it is the Christ who lives within me, because I don't exist anymore. Say. And so then the thoughts that you get as you enter into this beautiful nothingness that come from the right hemisphere are no longer thoughts or ideas in the normal sense. You begin to create things. You begin with your ideas to start to understand and to create and to make new things happen. But I don't know. I think basically it all will come of itself. But when you boil it down, you and everybody in this room and everybody out there on television, you're going to have to come to grips with the Jesus Christ and the Buddha and the Krishna who said, it is not you. You'll never accomplish a thing. It is simply you submitting yourself so that that brain power on the right side can become active to you. So here, let's wrap it up with 4:10. Song of Songs. How fair is your love, my sister, my spouse. How much better is your love than wine. Wine is spiritual life, and it makes you glad to the heart, see. But here, the intercourse, do you know what this is about? This is about an intercourse. It's about a relationship of the female part of you and the male part of you. And the male part of you penetrates the female and delivers the incorruptible seed, which then gives birth as the Christ, the child within. It's a very beautiful thing. But there's nothing you can contribute to it. There's nothing you have to learn about it. One of the great things is sometimes, if you get a chance, read about it in the Bible, is Joseph. Do you remember Joseph of the coat of many colors in Egypt? And he was sold into bondage by his brothers, the 11 of them, and he wound up becoming a big shot in Egypt. They came to him and they were starving, and they said, Joseph, we need help. Jacob is dying. We need help. And he looked for the child. He knew of the brothers there was a very little child named Benjamin. And he said, where's Benjamin? Oh, I said, well, we couldn't bring him this distance. Should you bring Benjamin? Because what he was looking for was the child. He says, I'm not interested in all of the rest. I just want to see Benjamin. And what the Bible was saying, what Scripture was saying, you've got to bring the child within you. And if you don't bring the child within you, your journey is going to be thwarted. And so they brought the child, and Judah came along. Judah was one of the 12 brothers, and Judah says, I'll bring Benjamin. And Judah stood with Benjamin in front of Joseph and said, I'll stay here with Benjamin. And Joseph said to Judah, I don't need you anymore. See, the thing here is that your spirit is nothing. Your spirit is only a vehicle to take the child part of you into the holy place. And once the child part of you enters into the holy place, the spirit's no longer needed. And so what then occurred was Joseph gave to little Benjamin his silver cup. And the word silver means consciousness, and the cup is which you drink the new wine. And so then you see it is the child who drinks the new wine. The stronger, the more intellectual a person gets in mysticism, you can see they're far, far, far away from what is called God. The person that is closest to where you could say that person can move right into the heart of God is somebody who knows nothing but is willing to give themselves. Willing to give themselves. And so here then as we wrap it says, how fair is thy love, my sister, my spouse. How much better is your love than wine, and the smell of your ointments than all spices. Spices are spiritual qualities that purify the mind, but look what it says. How much better than wine and the smell of thine is the smell of thine ointments than all spices. The smell is so close to the embrace. Here. Whether you can you visualize this? Can you think of this? Can you think of an embrace that maybe one time somebody, if you have had? The bodies coming together and the sweat and the smell. You know how real that is? I mean, you feel it. You stick to it. It's real. It's the animal. And this is how much, because it's no longer, it's no longer a Bible. It's no longer a scripture. It's no longer a study. It's no longer trying to figure anything out. It's simply going in and embracing he or she, which is the Christ within you. And so then in the Song of Songs, it says, how much better is the physical encounter with God than those psychic impulses that lead us to him. But that's what we're interested in. The majority of people are interested in psychic impulses. But what's the purpose of it? Say, instead of being interested in sacrificing yourself, giving yourself to become Christ, which is the ultimate union. How much better is meditation to experience than reading the Bible? And so, when we look into these types of things and we read scriptures of one kind or another, we should look in those the most simplistic thing that we could hear. And that basically is this which came from Jesus Christ. The kingdom of God is within you. And you should seek that kingdom. But seek that kingdom knowing that there is nothing that you or I or anyone else can do to make anything happen. But simply being willing to allow ourselves to be consumed by it within ourselves. Right? I don't know. I spent so much time in early times in my own meditation of trying to somehow find a missing thing. What was I doing wrong? So, you should feel this, or you should feel that, or you should see this, or you should see that. And then as I started to think, I said, Jesus, it's more denominations. It's more people with gimmicks, Until I finally read and I began to understand that the only time that you really achieve and you are consumed in really meditation is when you cease to exist. And there is nothing to see. What did Jesus Christ say? Would you take him as an authority? I think he's a pretty good authority. He said the kingdom comes not with observation. You're not going to see anything. If you see anything, you're going to see it through the impulses of the mind. The emotions, the mind, the physical. The only way you can see something is when there is something of the five senses at work. It's the only way. And there is no meditation until the five senses cease to be. That's the crucifixion. The 5 wounds that Jesus took are the 5 senses being crucified. Sight, taste, touch, smell, hearing. The hands, the feet, the side. The 5 wounds, and when the 5 senses are gone, then you're in meditation. That's why when David came to slay the beast, what did he do? He leaned down in the brook and he picked up 5 smooth stones. He had to take control of the 5. If he had left 1 and only taken 4, something he said could have destroyed him in his encounter with the beast. But he took 5 smooth stones, and then he took that 1 stone and he threw it, and it hit the beast in the center of his forehead. Consciousness. It's all in consciousness. The beast fell, and he cut his head off. Which, in other words, he separated himself from that which was the threat. He separated himself from that which is the fear. He separated himself from that which is the lower consciousness, and he overcame the beast. And all of the stories that you've read, and all of the things that you've heard, and all of this which is in the Bible or in the ancient books, is all talking about that one thing, cutting yourself away from the system, cutting yourself away from the things that are near and dear to you. Cutting yourself away from actual family, government, school, church, religion, cutting yourself away and become. That's what Jesus Christ, in this little mythology of Jesus Christ, he walked down and he says, hey, follow me. Well, you say, well, nobody in his right mind would give up their job and follow some guy they didn't know. That's true. That wasn't the point. The point is that's all that's required of anybody. Follow me. In other words, do you have the guts to do what I tell you to do? Do you have the courage to do what I'm going to tell you to do? Do you have the faith in order to just hold on and wait? And I'll tell you that this will happen for you. You don't need anybody else. There's a part in 1 John that says, if the Spirit dwells in you, you need no man that he teaches you. The most magnificent thing for me is to see people here that say, I know this, and they don't have to depend on me, because most of the thing I do is going over the same thing over and over and over and over again. Because how much is there to say? How many heads do you have? You only have one head? You only have one mind? I mean, what's the big deal? There's no millions of variations of this. That's created by men. It's like denominations. But the truth is that if you just take yourself and enter within and sit and wait, I don't care if you get thoughts. If you want an experience, well, that's fine. You know, so Timothy Leary spent his whole life messing around with stuff, trying to get, and some of it was very positive. A lot of these guys did this. Say, they'd use LSD, and then they would track the writings, you know, of these, what do they call them, things, EEGs, to see what happens to the mind and all of that stuff. But where are you going with that? You debilitate yourself, and so you've had an experience. You've forced your way into the secret place of the mind, but you're not in control. See? You've had some kind of a whacked-out experience, and you've seen all kinds of loony things, and you've seen all of this stuff, and so forth and so on, and then you come crashing down. And then you have to do it again in order to be able to see this, and again and again and again, until finally burnout. Burnout. And this is a place and a way to go to that place way above and beyond anything that is in the human mind without burnout. And it requires simply your willingness to stay and say, I don't want an experience. I don't want to be part of this group or that group or any group. I want to give myself to that which is nirvana. I want to fly off into the deepest reaches of space, and I want to float through the stars of the cosmos with Christ. I don't have to prove anything to anybody, and neither do you. See? And when you realize that, then you'll experience him or her. Thank you very much.